It's a Thurston County Amateur Barbecue Cook-Off. Now's your chance to bring your backyard barbecue skills into a local county-wide competition and see just how good it really is with the first annual Thurston County Amateur Barbecue Cook-Off competition. Just think, you could have a shot at prizes and recognition and have a great time as well. All the proceeds go to AFAB World. Go to afabworld.org or call 754-2868 for all the information. Preliminary rounds are forming now. It's the Thurston County Amateur Barbecue Cook-Off.
Hi, my name is Dan Griffey. I'm here to gain information about what the rural property owner is going through with the change in the critical area ordinances. As a state representative, I will represent this area, and I think it's important to me that we protect, preserve, and defend the private property ownership rights. And all too often, the government doesn't factor the private property owner into their decision making. And I'm here to support them. Thank you.
Folks, sign up.
We may be asking those that have already spoken to step out in the hall or go to another room so that the people that want to speak can come in. Again, we're going to try to keep it just as orderly as possible, and your cooperation is greatly appreciated. Okay, with that, I'm Commissioner Kathy Wolf, Chair of the Board this year. To my left is Commissioner Karen Valenzuela. To my right is Commissioner Sandra Romero. To her right is La Benita Bomar, the Clerk of the Board. And at the dais we have the staff, and I'm going to start with Andrew Jacobus, who's going to give you framing of the issues. No, actually, wait a minute. Before I do that, Andrew, excuse me, just a moment. I would like to ask Scott Clark, our planning director. We understand that a mailing went out recently that had some inaccuracies in it that we feel we need to address before we start the hearing, because I think a lot of you are here because of that mailing, and we'd like to at least let you know what the facts are. So Scott, would you please start with that?
Good morning, Commissioner Wolf. I'm Scott Clark, Thurston County Planning Director. And there were 5 key issues within the mailing we wanted to address. The first one, what we saw was the critical area ordinance. According to the mailing, wetlands buffers will extend to 500 feet. The buffers being proposed are between 50 and 300 feet. This type of buffer has been in place since 1996. How we're doing buffers will change. The buffers will be tailored based on the type of wetland. So the higher quality wetland, the bigger the buffer will get. Also, the increments at which the buffer increases will also change according to the size of the wetland. So rather than having a jump from 200 to 300 feet, you'll see the jump go in increments of, I believe, 20 feet. So no change in buffer widths. It's not going to 500 feet. The next one was the CAO will cause many current homes and businesses to become uninhabitable. That's according to the mailing, what the proposed law says is existing structures, including homes and businesses, are free to continue in their current form. Existing structures damaged by natural disaster, fire, or other accidents may be rebuilt to their current form, with the exception of homes located in areas where it's hazardous rebuilt. Carline Beach is an example of that, where the land is still sliding, or in an active floodway, where the rivers repeatedly come up and taken homes out. So yes, you can rebuild. Your homes will not be uninhabitable, and you can rebuild them to their current use. The next one was the CA will prohibit property owners from building or remodeling on their land. That's according to the flyer, the proposed law. Existing homes can be remodeled in Washington State, including Thurston County. Critical areas regulations are required to include a mechanism for property owners to derive a reasonable use of the property. The county is considering other provisions to give landowners more flexibility. So the U.S. Constitution, State Constitution, and Thurston County Ordinance will provide you a mechanism for getting a reasonable use of your property in the most critical of critical areas. The next one that was located in the flyer, property owners will not be allowed to replace a failed well or septic system. The proposed law specifically provides for replacement and repair of failing wells and septic systems. So you can repair and replace your septic system should it fail. And then finally, the sheriff will remove people from homes declared uninhabitable due to CAO regulations. We're unaware of any cases where the sheriff has removed people from their homes in response to a critical areas concern. The only exceptions are condemned properties in the floodway following repeated flood events, and those properties were rendered uninhabitable by the Carline Beach landslide.
In those cases, I assume it was a safety issue.
Public health and safety, and for Carline Beach, homes were continuing to move, or for example, in the Nisqually floods, the homes have been damaged to the point to where they couldn't be inhabited.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Clark? Okay, and now I'd like to ask Andrew Dufobis from our planning department to give us a presentation on the issue.
Thank you, Commissioner Wolf. Good morning, everyone. The Washington State Growth Management Act directs all cities and counties in Washington to designate and protect critical areas. The Critical Areas Ordinance governs how development and redevelopment can occur in environmentally sensitive areas. The 5 categories of critical areas that must be protected include geologically hazardous areas such as steep slopes, frequently flooded areas, wetlands, fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas, including special consideration for salmon and other fish as those, and critical aquifer recharge areas, which are areas where rainwater infiltrates the ground and replenishes our drinking water supplies. Wellhead protection areas are also included in critical aquifer recharge areas. The State Growth Management Act requires all jurisdictions to review and, if necessary, revise their critical areas ordinance every 7 years. Thurston County's update was due in 2005. That process had begun in 2002 and led to a public hearing in late summer of 2005. Due to staffing and workload issues in the following years, the effort was temporarily suspended in 2007. Thurston County is one of the last counties in Western Washington to update its critical areas ordinance. Critical areas function to support human and wildlife populations. The protection of these areas also helps to ensure the safety of our residents. For example, as we've just explored, regulations on buildings near frequently flooded areas and unstable slopes help to protect people and property from harm. Thurston County's Critical Areas Ordinance first went into effect in 1994, and it has not been comprehensively reviewed since that time. Drafts of the Critical Areas Ordinance update have been available on the Planning Department's website throughout the process. State law also directs jurisdictions to use best available science when reviewing their Critical Areas Ordinance. Thurston County's ordinance has not been reviewed since that requirement was put into state law. The best available science requirement means that county staff and policymakers must review pertinent scientific literature to determine how best to protect critical areas. To date, this effort has meant performing research, working with experts in various scientific fields, and studying the science used by adjacent communities in completing their updates. One habitat type that has received considerable attention in Thurston County is our prairie ecosystem. Today, less than 10% of historic prairie remains, with less than 3% of the historic extent still considered to be high-quality habitat. Since at least 1984, state and federal natural resource agencies have documented that Puget Prairie, Oregon white oak woodlands, and the plants and animals that depend on them for their existence are at risk of becoming extinct. Prairies and Oregon white oak woodlands support several species of greatest conservation need as determined by Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. In March 2011, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service announced that it was beginning an assessment of 4 prairie species to determine whether they merit listing under the Federal Endangered Species Act. In addition to habitat, prairie soils and the aquifers underneath provide for the natural storage of large quantities of water that today supply drinking water for many South Puget Sound communities. In December 2011, the Planning Commission held its public hearing on the CAO update. All testimony received for that hearing was distributed in its raw form to the Planning Commission for their consideration, and testimony was also forwarded to other departments if the comments were relevant to their individual authority and operations. The Planning Commission worked through all public comment received and issued its recommendation to the board on May 2nd, 2012. The board's public hearing draft was published in early June 2012, with some chapters receiving further amendments and being subsequently published. All draft chapters are available online and in written form in the Permanent Assistance Center in Building 1 of the courthouse complex. Briefly, I will now take you through some major changes that are proposed in the Critical Areas Ordinance. As Scott mentioned, some buffers may be changing to reflect best available science and to comply with state and federal laws that have been adopted since the original CAO was put into effect. The range of wetland buffers, the 50 to 300 feet, is not proposed to change, but the method of determining those buffers is proposed to change. The jurisdictional size of wetlands that will be regulated by Thurston County is proposed to decrease, in line with what other jurisdictions have also adopted. Channel migration zones, which are areas where river and stream channels naturally migrate over time and may pose a threat to development on stream banks, are proposed to be regulated in the draft CAO. The method of characterizing our critical aquifer recharge areas is also proposed to change. Currently, these sensitive areas are determined based on the sensitivity of the soil and the presence of wellhead protection areas surrounding drinking water wells. Under the proposal, information on the geologic features below the surface would also be added to provide a more comprehensive method of gauging the sensitivity of the aquifers under the ground. The provisions of the Interim Prairie Conservation Ordinance, which was first adopted by the board in 2009, are also proposed to be incorporated into the draft Critical Areas Ordinance. Notice of this public hearing was advertised in a variety of ways. The Olympian published a notice of public hearing on May 25th, 2012, and the Nisqually Valley News, Thurston County's newspaper of record, also published on that same date. Newspaper articles that have mentioned the Critical Areas Ordinance have been recently published in the Olympian on June 1st and June 22nd, 2012, and these articles were also picked up by surrounding newspapers as well. The Thurston County Planning Department also advertised the hearing in emails to its webmail subscriber list, which reaches approximately 700 people. Emails were distributed on June 5th, June 15th, and June 22nd, 2012. The public hearing has been a topic of discussion at several recent Board of County Commissioner briefings and has been advertised on the county's general webpage and the Planning Department's webpage for the last few weeks. The hearing has also been advertised by several outside community groups through their own publications. As of 8 a.m. this morning, approximately 180 written comments have been submitted for the hearing. These will all be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners in the coming days and will also be posted on our website for anyone to view. So far, some of the themes and subject areas that have emerged from public testimony are concerns regarding property rights, concerns about safeguarding the environment, acknowledgement that the CAO update is overdue, and statements that it is important to base any new requirements on best available science. Several comments included in the record suggested improvements to the CAO or also submitted documents that the county may be able to use in its best available science record, and we will be reviewing all of those. Following the public hearing, the board will hold further work sessions to discuss public comments and issues brought forward in the public hearing before they consider adoption of the Critical Areas Ordinance. To be notified of future action on the Critical Areas Ordinance, please sign up for the Planning Department's webmail service by visiting www.thurstonplanning.org and clicking on the webmail link at the top of the website. And more information about the Critical Areas Ordinance is also posted at that website. And that concludes my staff report for today's hearing.
Any questions for Andrew? Okay, Andrew, I have a question. If people bring comments today, written comments that have not previously been submitted either by email or by snail mail, then they should leave the comments with you at the table, or they can get them in after the hearing. But
yes, they can. If you bring comments to the podium, you can just hand them to me and I'll put them in this folder here. If you'd like to make a comment elsewhere, we do have written comment forms out in the hallways. And again, you can just bring everything to myself or another staff person and we'll include everything.
And again, if you're speaking to something where you've already written comments or he's already received them, you don't need to leave a duplicate, but if you haven't, please feel free to leave it with us. Okay, with that, it's just a little after, a quarter after. I think I'll call the first break about at 11:30. That would be 1 hour and about 14 minutes. So that's the first break. Okay, with that, I'm going to start down the list. We have at this point about 80 people, I believe, signed up. I think so. All right, first is Dan Cathers. And, excuse me, go ahead, Dan, come on. I'm going to call 5 at a time if you would line up behind Dan, and then we'll just keep moving through, and then I'll call the next 5. The first 5 are Dan Cathers, second is Justin Cover, third, Mark Kelly, 4, Nick Robbins, 5, Leila Smith. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Dan Cathers. I live at 1418 Laredo Drive, southeast in the urban growth area near the Regional Athletic Complex. I'm an elected member of the Board of Supervisors for the Thurston Conservation District, but I want to make it clear that I'm here speaking today as an individual and I haven't coordinated my comments with the district in any way. I'd like to start by acknowledging the significant effort that has led up to this morning's meeting. I know it's unlikely that any land use ordinance will ever garner unanimous support of the citizens, but I believe you will see from the testimony presented today that there is significant opportunity to improve the ordinance before us. I'd like to ask the following rhetorical question. What is the difference between a 300-foot buffer that is part of a conservation easement agreement and a similar 300-foot buffer that is designated by the Critical Area Ordinance? My answer is that the easement is voluntary and reached through consensus, while the CAO buffer is reached through force and edict. Another difference is that an easement is considered property. It assigns a monetary value to the property rights that are surrendered as part of the agreement. On the other hand, a CAO buffer is not assigned any monetary value because it is taken by force. Both buffers may produce similar outcomes in conserving natural resources, but one buffer provides no compensation. I believe this difference is unjust, immoral, and should be illegal. My recommendation for the proceedings today is to completely rewrite the ordinance with a different goal in mind. Actually, I recommend two goals. First, I'd like land use for non-agricultural lands to be addressed through a voluntary stewardship program. The Board of Commissioners recently agreed to use the VSP for ag lands. I would like to see the same approach used for all lands. Second, I would like to see the voluntary agreements reached through the VSP be written as conservation easements. I would like the easements to provide just compensation for landowners. Finally, I'd like to suggest that the Conservation Futures Program be looked at as a potential source of funding for conservation easements. I know that adopting an entirely new approach to land use regulation will be a significant effort. We here in Thurston County have the opportunity to lead the way in Washington State by not only using VSP for ag, but for all lands. We can set
you to conclude.
Yes.
Thank you.
We can set a new high standard for cooperation, respect of property rights, while pursuing measurable outcomes and improving the conservation of natural resources.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Culver?
Hello, my name is Justin Cover. I'm a proud Democrat and Olympia voter. And before you vote on this ordinance, I want to remind Commissioners Romero and Valenzuela of that day at the Sandstone Cafe in August of 2009. The first time I spoke to you about how the Critical Areas Ordinance was not based on sound science, and that our prairie preservation policies were not in line with best practices by which the Nisqually tribe accomplished your stated goals for at least 10,000 years. I want to remind this board of how I brought you peer-reviewed science, and I was told it was too old by Commissioner Valenzuela and her proxies, even though it was cited in the 2005 Stinson report you based your policy on. I want to remind you how the Krippner study, commissioned by the Thurston County Economic Development Council, on which Commissioner Romero sits, rebuked the conclusions on which this board based its economic policy. I want to remind you of Brandel Bryant, Misty Chastain, Chris Weaver, Jill Nelson, Donna Baker, and the hundreds of others who begged you for redress since then. Each one represents a livelihood that has been seized by your radical desire to control growth at the cost of human dreams. I want to remind you of how the gopher has survived and thrived in a gravel mine on Tilley Road, even after underground gasoline tanks were installed for our county vehicles. I want you to look at the ocean of discontent you have created. You have divided our people. You have divided our party. From Boston Harbor to the Chehalis Reservation, and from Summit Lake to Bucota, Stop Thurston County signs are everywhere. It didn't have to be like this, but you showed us that working with you was a pointless exercise. I wish you would have listened to a Democrat like me long ago, because then there would be no need for Stop Thurston County, and we would have a critical areas ordinance based on sound science that didn't injure our economy and our freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to ask that you please refrain from clapping and other uppers. We can go through this much more efficiently. Thank you. Mark Kelly. Mark.
Free speech, buddy.
Hi, I'm Mark Kelly. I live in Olympia. I want to say it was some pretty wordplay used at the beginning of this testimony by the staff, and I was struck by, if that's true, then why does this make my testimony possible? The title of my testimony is How to Drive Jobs and Millions of Dollars in Tax Revenue Out of Thurston County by the three commissioners. This is a map of where Ritchie Brothers used to employ people and pay taxes. This is their property area. I say used to because they moved last month to Pierce County. They sold this property at a loss.
Okay, excuse me. Anyone that speaks other than Mr. Kelly is going to be asked to leave the room. Thank you.
Lewis County.
All right, whoever did that boo, I'd like, the next time I hear something like that, I'm going to ask that you leave the room, please. Thank you.
They sold this property at a loss, and they took their jobs and millions of dollars in annual tax revenue to Lewis County. They spent millions to build a new facility down there, which made Lewis County's unemployed construction workers very happy, and they took their millions of dollars in tax revenue to Lewis County, which made their residents very happy. Why they did all these things that are so damaging to their bottom line? One of the big reasons is the three commissioners and the critical areas ordinance. The other is that it makes more sense in the long run to move down there than having to deal with Thurston County's land use policies. Now this map right here in the center is a wetland, right in the center of this circle. And this red thing around it is the buffer zone that's used to protect this wetland. See how it extends over the paved Case Road right here? And it reminds me of the old joke, how did the wetlands cross the road? Because the three commissioners said it could. Also note how this big red circle passes over this tax-paying, job-employing building right here that was previously owned by Ritchie Brothers. I hate it when existing buildings get in the way of new wetlands trying to cross the street, don't you? This buffer zone results in this building being non-conforming, and it makes it impossible for Ritchie Brothers to expand, which is what they wanted to do, so they could employ more people and get more tax dollars.
You're addressing the commissioners, not the crowd, please. Would you address your remarks to us, please?
I thought I was the one that was only supposed to speak. Just kidding. I don't know how people who graduated from the state's weekend course on how to become a certified wetland assessment person missed including this other building in their buffer zone. Perhaps the state needs to make that a 3-day course. This building right here.
Would you like to show that map to us, please?
I'd like you to have it.
Thank you.
Sure. Here's the buffer zone. Here's the size of the wetland. Here's the road that it crosses over. Here's the building that it makes it non-conformant, and it just barely misses their other building over here. But it all worked out in the end because Ritchie Brothers left anyways. My question to you is this. If a company as large as Ritchie Brothers couldn't find a way to do business in Thurston County...
I need to ask you to conclude. Please conclude. Finish your sentence.
No, because you were talking during half of my testimony.
Would you please finish your comments?
No, I'll finish my testimony. Don't you worry. If a company as large as Ritchie Brothers couldn't find a way to do business in Thurston County, what hope does any small business owner have to provide a living for his or her family? Now, I was talking to my Italian grandmother on the phone the other day, and I told her about all this. She moved here when fascism
Okay, we need
took
to
over in
conclude
Germany.
this now, Mr. Keller. I'm going to have to ask you to be removed from the room, please. Please conclude. Finish a sentence and tell us.
I have
finish
two
the story.
sentences.
Two
Is that going to be
sentences is
okay?
fine, and
If
after
you hadn't
that.
interrupted me so many times, I would have been done.
All right, Justin Culver, would you please leave the room? Just finish your sentence, please. Would you please stand there? The next comment that's made, would you please ask the people to remove if they continue? It was Mr. Culver and somebody behind him, I believe, that were doing that. All right, Mr. Kelly, you have 2 sentences.
See, Kyle. She said back in the old country, they used to call this licenza de sottora. I said, Grandma, what's that? She said, license to steal. I said, yeah, that sounds about right. She said, you need new commissioners. I told her, yeah, that sounds about right.
Thank you. Nick Robbins.
I'm Nicholas Allen Robbins, 8411 176th Avenue, Southwest in Rochester. And actually, it's kind of a good thing that this man went first because I'm from the Farm Boy Restaurant, and we own the property directly across the street from Ritchie Brothers. Mm-hmm. And just like you said, we can't expand anything. There's already enough rules and regulations and everything. You got to keep small business in mind. You got to keep business in mind. without business in this county, we have no tax dollars. We have to make it easier for businesses, and that's all I ask. Just please keep that in mind in your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Lena Smith?
Yes, my folks bought Farm Boy Restaurant 32 years ago. And we have 3 generations working there, and we have had for 32 years. And we have killed ourselves to keep that place open and viable. And this kind of stuff ruins our property values, ruins any resale that we were hoping to have for maybe a retirement. And it's absolutely not fair, and we're not going to take it. Thank you very much.
The next 5 names are Brian Robbins, Leonard DiPola, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, Rose LeBaron, Linda Berger, and Greg DiPola. Okay, Mr. Robbins.
The name's Brian Robbins, 8411 176 Avenue. Yes, I just want to comment on what the previous lady said. You know, we are the Farm Boy Restaurant, and we do work our tails off. And for you guys to put all these regulations on us is just not right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Leonard DiPola. I'm one of the representatives of DiPola Farms. My father bought this farm in 1948. It was at 5945 Ivan Way. My father started raising cucumbers, beans, peas, all those things on this so-called wetlands. Later on, we got into the strawberry business, and we grew them for many years. You don't grow strawberries on wetlands. And after we finished up with strawberries, after many years, we started bringing in Christmas trees and growing them. We had semi-trucks on so-called wetlands. My father worked hard all night baling trees by hand on wetlands, so-called. My sisters will have a report of the dry lands that we do own. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Rose LeBaron, and I'm talking also about the property that's located just south of the exit 88 along I-5 corridor that is zoned I-5 commercial. There's 17.3 acres there, and it's on the east side of the freeway. I have a wetlands inventory study that was done by the Coot Company, an independent study firm, and on this property, and it does state all the facts. It has a survey map, etc., with elevation, and it does prove that 80% of the land is not flooding or wetlands, which you are trying to propose that it is in the critical care area, according to your maps of the new regulations that are trying to be adopted. And I have some maps here and photos of the Christmas trees that are now young timber that are along the whole property, entire property, and like my brother said, that does not grow in wetlands. And if you would like to, I'm going to submit this to you, and so that you would have a copy of all of this, I'd sure appreciate that.
Thank you, we appreciate that.
And so I really would like you to reconsider and do some investigating before you do put that into critical care.
Leave that with Mr. Phillips. Thank you very much. Okay. Berger?
My name is Linda Berger. I'm also a joint owner of 5945 Ivan Way. My parents bought these parcels 135, 123, 20100, and 135, 123, 10400 back in the 1940s. I was one of 6 children and many foster children raised on this property. And as my brothers and sisters have said, there's now timber on this property. It is not wetlands. We're here to object to this land being zoned as critical area. It is valuable commercial land that borders I-5. Back in the 1970s, Dad was offered $1 million for this land when it was zoned commercial. He did not want to sell, because this was our home, and my parents wanted to leave their children an inheritance. After Dad died in 2006, we had a market analysis done on the land, and it was valued at $3.5 million. Now, with this proposal, our land would be almost worthless. We know this property well. Our home, which still stands, has never even flooded, and it's approximately 150 feet from the creek. This is unjustified and unfair. We ask that this be reconsidered. I have a map here. It's a wetland survey that was done by Bracy and Thomas. There's a very small area close to Prairie Creek, and Prairie Creek is a seasonal creek. It's dry half the year. I mean, we're not talking about Scatter Creek or the Chehalis River. This is a seasonal creek. There's a small area that temporarily will overflow behind the house. And it's a very small area that would even be considered a critical area. For you to zone this entire piece of property as critical area is unfair. It's unjustified. It's timber. We have pictures. My brother has pictures that show the land. It has timber on it. It's not, there's no indicators of wetlands. So we would ask that you would look at this information carefully and reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg DePola.
My name's Greg DePola. I'm going to talk about property. I've got a number of photographs. I don't know whether you'll take them or not, but this is the kind of timber that is on their property. It is, it's unbelievable that you're calling this stuff wetlands. My whole life, we've lived there. I've lived there my whole life. My folks lived in behind me, and I built a house on the front of the property. And the only reason that there is a dike behind that place, that because when the water comes up and gets about 3 to 4 inches up over the creek bank. It's a little creek bank, but other than that, it never gives us any problem. No problem at all. And for them to say this is critical wetland is baloney. And if they live there, they would see that it is just exactly the way I said. It is typical baloney. It has been raining for a number. I mean, it's been raining solid for these months, the last couple of months, and yet I've got a picture of the creek, and it's just down to a little trickle. It's about 2 foot wide and about a couple inches deep. And the thing, if you look at it, people would look at the thing, it is the creek bed is quite a bit deeper than that. So other than, I don't know, I think I'll just go in and give these pictures to you.
Yes, please do.
And I'll just...
Yes,
put
you
them
put that to
inside.
Depolis. Thank you.
And you can take a look at them and just decide for yourself. It's unbelievable that you call those wetlands. Timber's the way it should be, just growing right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next 5 speakers are Wayne Thorpe, Cynthia Pratt, Harold Thomberg, Enid Cox, and Glenn Morgan. Cynthia? Oh, I'm sorry, Wayne.
My name is Wayne Thorpe. My address is P.O. Box 1957, Yelm, Washington. I'd like to address you and say that I've reviewed the YouTube videos regarding the CAO testimony the past few days. It appears that several scientific studies have been presented and that this panel is way over their heads in understanding the complexities of what's being proposed. So I really, you are trying to pass judgment on what to do with the underlying problem of uncontrolled excuse me, urban sprawl. We have had that same problem ever since Columbus discovered America. And now we are here in Thurston County with the same problem. The solution? Pass zoning laws, ban any growth by humans, pass a ruling that Thurston County cannot have any additional human babies, no new buildings or hospitals. No one is allowed to move into this county, only move out. But any non-residents can come and spend money as long as they only ride non-polluting bikes. We will need to build a tunnel for I-5 with no exits to avoid the pollution in the county. We have somehow have visitors spend money to see reclaimed prairie lands abounding with butterflies and other non-job producing activities. As the population dies off, we will be giving the land back to the bugs and the animals. But the best thing of this solution would be that no new bureaucrats will be allowed to move in and that our government would shrink. We will be able to tear down most of our government buildings and return them to natural prairie lands. The side effects would outweigh the consequences. You would lose your jobs, and we would not be able to create new jobs. Is this approach working in China? They were trying this for centuries, but even as we attend this hearing, they are changing that ugly capitalism society that the rest of this nation has succumbed to. Whether we like it or not, human growth is relentless. We do not have buffalo roaming the prairies, nor do we want them. We do need to remember that we have rights. We bought our lands with the idea that we would be able to do it with as we see fit, as long as it does not endanger other humans. This great nation was founded on freedom. We have growth and prospered. Most of our forefathers settled this land, and it has grown according to the stewardship that has common sense, and the most part been adequate. We might not like the sum of what has happened. We will not like the sum of what might happen in the future. We all know that population growth will not stop. Passing this document will create another layer of red tape, reeking of additional control and lining of so-called official pocketbooks. Again, what a document...
Conclude, Mr. Thorpe. Okay.
Again, in a document 500 plus pages long should be cut to one page. Proposal stating simply, all is fine in Thurston County. We are doing what needs to be done in the normal course of business without unnecessary regulations.
Thank you. Cynthia Pratt.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, my name is Cynthia Pratt, 5021 21st Avenue Southeast, Lacey. Thank you for allowing comments on the Critical Areas Ordinance and specifically the CARA. I'm the president of the Lot Clean Water Alliance Board of Directors. LOT stands for the joint ownership of the Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility by Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and Thurston County. Our mission is to preserve and protect public health and the environment by cleaning and restoring water resources for our communities. Because of that overarching mission, LOT and the county's role to protect our water resources have the same goal. We are supportive of the county completing their CAO. It has been long overdue, as you, I'm sure, know. We do have two comments to make today. Our comment letter will include more specific issues. First, we are glad that the text acknowledges that more information is needed concerning groundwater infiltration of reclaimed water. However, the tables that refer to reclaimed water contradict the text. The X in the tables under reclaimed water means prohibited. The text states that a decision on reclaimed water will not be made until there is more information. While there may be a verbal understanding of what this means now, 3 to 4 years from now, when there is staff turnover or commissioners may have changed, this will not be understood. Our solution is to place an asterisk by the X, then footnote or include it in the box to the left, stating that no decision has been made until the groundwater recharge scientific study by lot and other peer-reviewed scientific studies have been completed to provide answers on how infiltrated reclaimed water affects Thurston County's groundwater. In summary, please place an asterisk footnoting the X in the tables under reclaimed water. Clearly state that more information refers to Lott's groundwater recharge scientific study and other peer-reviewed scientific studies. Thank you again for allowing Lott's comments today.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Thomberg. Go ahead.
Leland Harold Thornburg, 101538 Military Road, Tenino. I'd like you to be reminded that every winter the Lott plant receives more water through their system than they can accommodate, and they dump raw sewage into the harbor. This happens somewhere between 3 and 5 times a year in the winter. In proportion to that, we concern ourselves with the water that people own land, and I'll try to address it this way. We have to control, you are about to modify the rules to protect the waters. And your waters, to speak generally, are going to take control of every piece of water that runs on the surface of the ground, every piece of water that accumulates into puddles bigger than the size of a 3-car.
Must be protected include geologically hazardous areas such as steep slopes, frequently flooded areas, wetlands, fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas, including special consideration for salmon and other fish as those, and critical aquifer recharge areas, which are areas where rainwater infiltrates the ground and replenishes our drinking water supplies. Wellhead protection areas are also included in critical aquifer recharge areas. The State Growth Management Act requires all jurisdictions to review and, if necessary, revise the critical areas of the Thurston County's update was in 2005. That process had begun in 2002 and led to a public hearing in the summer of 2005. Due to staffing and workload issues in the following years, the effort was temporarily suspended in 2007. Thurston County is one of the last counties in Western Washington to update its critical areas ordinance. Critical areas function to support human and wildlife populations. The protection of these areas also helps to ensure the safety of our residents. For example, as we've just explored, regulations on buildings near frequently flooded areas and unstable slopes help to protect people and property. Thurston County's critical areas ordinance first went into effect in 1994 and has not been comprehensively reviewed since that time. Drafts of the critical areas ordinance update have been available on the planning department's website throughout the process. State law also directs jurisdictions to use best available science to include these ways of
Open upstairs. We have rooms open upstairs.
Okay, we could want to walk upstairs.
There are also restrooms upstairs.
So we got one more. There's the one there.
That's great, thank you.
We should,
We may be able to contain one here.
2011, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recognized the beginning of assessment of 4 prairie species which are directly existing under the federal endangered species act. In addition to habitat, prairie soils and the aquifers underneath provide for the natural storage of large quantities of water that today supply drinking water for many South Puget Sound communities. In December 2011, the Planning Commission held its public hearing on the CAO update. All testimony received for that hearing was distributed in its raw form to the Planning Commission.
start over with that? How many at the first? 1,000 people at the first meeting?
Yeah, 1,000 people at the first meeting, about 700 at the second.
Test. Hello.
Opposed to the CAO, so they're still doing it again, so.
And they didn't include any of that testimony, or?
It does not look by the way, since this ordinance is almost identical in content to the one they presented in 2005, it doesn't look like those comments were incorporated.
Oh, that was back in 2005?
You're gonna look it up from here?
Just started over.
Today.
Kill that thing.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I don't understand
Plug this power cord in behind you.
some of that data, so it's easier for them to implement such a task. But we don't know when. And we don't know when.
Ready?
It's feasible.
Oh, cell phone's off. Good Lord. Cell phone's on.
If you make it like runs, is that a
Yeah, cell phone check. I'm checking mine first, make sure they're on.
Yeah, move it does that way you want it to move.
Okay, I think we're ready. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for giving up your Saturday morning, and it looks like it'll be the number of people here, maybe Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon, but we certainly appreciate you doing this. This is a very important issue to all of us, I think, and we're very anxious to hear what you have to say. We'd appreciate everyone being respectful, and I certainly expect that will be the case. I'm going to try to make this hearing just as efficient as possible, because there's a lot of people, and we're going to ask everyone to keep their comments to 3 minutes. And we have a timer over here. I believe we have a timer light.
Yes.
And it'll be green for the first minute and a half. Is that correct?
For the two. It's green for 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and then yellow for 30 seconds, and then you'll see a red light, and your time is up.
And when you see the red light, we ask you to please conclude. So we're going to call 5 numbers at a time and to try to get one person at the podium and then 4 others behind them, and we'll move you through as quickly as we can. And remember, we're trying to take notes and everything you're saying is being recorded, and a lot of you will be giving written testimony as well, which we'll be going over in great detail. So, and if you do feel that someone has already expressed your point of view and you want to say exactly the same thing, it's perfectly acceptable to just come up and say, I agree with the previous speaker, or I agree, or if you want to use your full 3 minutes, that's totally up to you. We just ask that you not cede your time to anyone else, and that you be respectful of everyone's time. We have everyone signed in, and I believe you all have numbers, and we would like you to please return the numbers when you're done.
Hi Diego, howdy YouTube.
and welcome Thurston County to the farmhouse. This here is the farmhouse show and I'm Jimbo Jitsu. Today we are cooking up beef loin roast in the crock pot. Pretty good. Our twist, we're adding lots of sweet vegetables, sweet potatoes, parsnips, all sorts of good things. Come on, let's cook it up. We have a top round beef tip roast, something like that. As you can see, it's pretty well marbled. Liberally salt this all over both sides and let it sit for 1 hour. You've rinsed and dried it first. Salt it. Then you want to combine 1/6 cup of garlic powder, 1/6 cup of onion powder, 2 tablespoons of tango spice, twist and shout. Awesome seasoning. And after that hour of sitting, you just dry rub it like you would any good old barbecue. Set it in the fridge for overnight and call it good. We'll get back to you tomorrow on that one. Alright, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Alright. Get liberal with it. Coat it. Coat it good. I could have put a mustard rub down first if I wanted to do competition barbecue style. Now see how much waters came out of that? How red it is from the salt? It's called alchemy. And there you have it. It keeps absorbing the spice in, so it looks like there's not on it, but it's been thoroughly coated. I've rolled it around. I'm going to put some saran wrap on it and put it in the fridge and let it sit overnight. It should turn moist, and then we're going to put it in the crock pot. And we're going to cook it low and slow with some veggies. Alright, our roast has been sitting overnight in the Tango Spice Twist and Shout combination spices. We have some chopped up carrots and potatoes. We've already added 2 tabs of butter and our carrots and potatoes. These are a little bit bigger than the ones we're going to add after the meat. We put these down as a base, then we'll put the meat in, and then we'll put the other carrots and potatoes. Later on I'm going to add a sweet potato and a parsnip and an onion. But for now we're going to start with this. I'm going to put some salt and pepper on the base layer. And I'm not going to salt and pepper the top layer because it's going to get spices off of that too. And we'll stir it all together at the end. So we've got it set on low. We're going to bump it up to high for 30 minutes after we put the meat in. And then we're going to put it back on low for about 4 to 6 hours. Alright, and the last thing I'm going to add is pomegranate wine vinegar. And that's about 1/4 cup. We're just going to try and drizzle this around on the vegetables. And that'll provide a little bit of liquid besides the butter that's at the bottom so that everything will cook properly. And it'll provide a nice little saucy so that'll provide a nice liquid base at the bottom with a little bit of tangy pomegranate flavor on the vegetables. It will add wonderfully at the end. Alright, here we have 1 sweet potato cut into about 1/2 inch chunks, peeled and rinsed. Alright, a parsnip is kind of halfway between a sweet potato and a carrot. Its skin isn't as tough, so you don't need to peel it all the way, but I gave it a pretty quick skinning. And it's sweeter than a carrot. Cooking time's about halfway through, so we're going to stir the vegetables up, not the vegetables. And we're going to Add a half a cup of chopped dried onion and a half a cup of chopped dried garlic. Let's get to stirring those vegetables up and then flipping the meat over. And the meat's looking pretty done. We may be closer than halfway. Planning. Okay. Get this bad boy at hand. Look at the juices run out of it. Yep, it's getting there. A couple more hours. Plenty of liquid in the bottom now. We have canned mushrooms. They don't need to be cooked very long, just heat it up. So I've drained most of them, so we're going to dump those in there. And we like canned corn, so I've drained most of that. We're going to dump that in there. And I'm going to pull the roast up. You notice how much it shrank? It used to cover the whole thing. I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to stir all the vegetables and the seasoning together, and then I'm going to taste the liquid out of it. And I'll know if I need to add more salt, pepper, or any other seasoning to this whole concoction. Because in a crock pot, if you don't stir everything together, the flavors don't mingle. So I'm going to stir it together, and then I'm going to let it cook for 15 to 30 more minutes, and then we'll have dinner. It's that simple, folks. This is not the best meat probe I have. Yep, 170 degrees. And I was hoping for more like 190 internal temperature. I'm not sure if this is even falling apart yet. I guess the outside is. Oh, that is good. Oh, look at the juice come out of there. We're going to see if we can juicen it up a bit by resting it in foil in the microwave. I like to rest my food in the microwave. It retains the heat a lot better. So we're just going to pull this up, wrap it in the foil, and put it in the microwave for 15 minutes. We're going to stir up the vegetables, and then we're going to let them turn off the crock pot and let them finish for 15 minutes, sit for 15 minutes. They're not finished, they're done. Alright, tons of good vegetables. Veggie-bitty-bitty-bitties. Nope, they're vegetables. It's not that complicated. Look at the garlic, potatoes, parsnip, sweet potato, carrot, corn. If I weren't allergic to peas, there'd probably be some of those in here too. Garlic. Did I say garlic? Let's say it again. We all love garlic, eh? Alright, here we have our wonderful vegetable platter. We have some potato, big chunk. That's how I know it's potato. Some carrot. Mushroom. Dang, missed the mushroom. Where are the parsnips? And the sweet potato. There's parsnip. And the sweet potato. Alright, and with that we have, here's a nice piece of meat. Isn't that tasty looking? And it's that simple, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's quick, well, it's not quick. It's low, slow, and long, but it's not much work in cooking. It's just letting it cook. The meat really held its flavor well. That is really good. That's some good stuff. Thank you, Joe from Tango Spice. I really appreciate you sending me that there spice. I always love trying new spices. And if you want to know more about him, I think it's Tango Spice on YouTube. So it'd be youtube.com/Tango Spice.